Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday Leading Change episode this week with Simon Flossmann. Hi Simon, welcome back.
Hi Vasco, let's do it.
Let's do it. Exactly. That's the attitude. And that's exactly the attitude we often need for change management as well. Let's do it. Small increments, of course, but let's do it. All right. So here's the question. You, as a Scrum Master, have been involved in many change processes. Monday and Tuesday, we talked about two different change processes that you were directly involved with already. And we want to focus on, the steps, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned during that change process that you still use today, that became part of your toolbox. So share that story with us, Simon.
Okay. I think that's one of the change process which I'm very proud of. So let me start by describing the situation a little bit. I had the opportunity to work as a Scrum Master together with a colleague, and we worked for a big company working in the energy sector. And we worked with a department which was mainly responsible for developing a legacy software product which was used to manage big energy networks. And I think the department had around 40 people in total. And let's say their current way of working was a little bit more traditional. And my task, or our task, was to change the way of working to be a more agile one by introducing Scrum to the whole department. And the department wants to have more self-organizing and autonomous teams in order to deliver customer value, or let's say they want to deliver customer requirements a little bit faster. I think that was the original goal. So how would you start introducing Scrum to around 40 people working on a big product without having much background in agile software development? And my approach was with a big bang. So what did we do? We started by having a formal training in Scrum, and we focused on the roles. So we had training for the developers, the training for Scrum Masters, and also some stuff for product owners. After that, we had a workshop where the people could self-select in which team they want to be. So we had some circumstances, or let's say we had some constraints. So how much teams we would like to have. And we had the constraint that the team should be cross-functional in order to achieve our goals. After that, we basically started with our first sprint. And I worked with them, I think, 6 to 12 months. And the teams really did an awesome job. And I would call it a great success. But still, we had to learn a lot. And maybe I can share some things would I would do differently in the future.
Okay, so keep that in mind. Don't forget what you're going to say, but also walk us through some of the challenges, because of course, formal training and, having this self-selection process is very good and it's a very useful approach, but it's not free of problems or challenges.
No, and that are basically the learnings.
So go for it.
So one of the first learnings I would have is, I would describe it as nail it before you scale it. It's not the best idea to introduce Scrum to teams and also to scale Scrum at the same moment. Everybody did a fantastic job, but we always need to keep in mind that if you scale stuff, you also scale the problems. For instance, I worked with a team and we had, I think, quite some success with creating a definition of done and basically improve it each sprint. So just in the sprint retrospective, we always find things to improve it. I would say our definition of done become rock solid over the time and also provide much transparency, at least of the part of the increment we were working on. But other teams had much more difficulties in creating a definition of done. And even worse, the definition of done was not shared across all the teams. So we had different definition of dones and different understandings. So this makes it even worse because you don't have fully transparent increment if you have different definition of done and different understandings. And it was a real struggle to align these. So that was one thing. And what else was what I learned the hard way, I would say, we started a little bit blindly because we had no metrics in place to measure progress on actually achieving our goal. And for me, the goal was to kickstart Scrum and become more agile in a sense. And we didn't have any metrics of measuring progress. So the only metric we had was the opinion of the department head. He was telling us that we did a good job and things were as expected. That's not the best thing to drive and let's say agile adoption. You need to find some way to measure your efforts because in the middle of the time, I think after some months, you cannot tell if you're really moving forward or if you're moving back now.
Yeah, that aspect of metrics is actually rather important also in order for us to be able to inspect and adapt as you described on Tuesday. But tell us a little bit more about that. What kind of metrics did you think, now that you have the benefit of hindsight, you should have introduced to measure the deployment of Scrum in the organization?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we should measure how do we achieve the goal, what we actually want to achieve. And I think this was delivering customer requirements faster. That was the goal we were given. And we had needed some metric to measure this. I'm thinking of like cycle time or something. So how long it takes if we actually having an idea what to do until we really deliver it to the customer. And if this metric will not improve, I would say we are doing something wrong. And the other thing is how you measure self-organization and autonomous teams. And I have really no clue how to do that. So maybe you have an idea.
So of course we can always take the qualitative approach, right? So ask the team, do they feel that they are productively self-organizing? And then also ask the stakeholders, do they feel that the team is productively self-organizing? So that would be one obvious approach. But self-organization for me means that the team is progressively self-sustaining. So it's not just that they know how to manage their own work, it's also that they take responsibility, they take ownership, and they solve the problems on their own. So I would definitely start counting the times, the events when the team asks for help outside the team itself, like whether it be a manager or whatever it might be. And that's okay. Those requests for help are not the problem. The problem is what type of requests for help do they ask, right? Are these requests for help that they would possibly be able to solve on their own? They just don't feel they can, or maybe they feel they're not allowed to. Or are they really requests for help that require external contribution, like, collaboration across different departments requires external contribution. So I would ask questions like that, because at the end of the day, self-organization is not the goal. Self-organization is a tool we use to allow the teams to be more productive and also, obviously, to feel better about how they contribute to the product. What do you think about that, Simon?
Exactly. So I always try to carry out that the goal is to deliver customer requirements and not to self-organize. And I tried some approaches, what you mentioned. So I had a look at the dependency between the teams and the work and how fast they could resolve this dependency and did they resolve them on their own. That was one thing I did. And I also looked, like, as I told you at the beginning, we started with a self-selection workshop. This does not mean that the teams are stable right from the beginning. So if you take empiricism to account, then in my opinion, the teams should change a little bit over time in order to make the best teams to achieve our goals. And I also had a look at this. Does the team composition change? And we had some remarkable things. I think at the end, after 12 or 10 months or so, they by itself destroyed a team and built a new one. So that was, in my understanding, it was a very awesome experience, but it's quite difficult to measure, is this really self-organization or not?
That absolutely. And also, if we bring back the conversation to the goal, it doesn't really matter, right? So
Yes.
I think that's one of the key takeaways, right? Is there's a bunch of tools, a bunch of approaches we use as Scrum Masters, and when we use Scrum, like self-organization being one. But at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is to help the team contribute to the development, the growth of the company or the product they're working on.
Exactly.
Great story. Thank you, Simon. That was really filled with insights, with patterns, tips, and also anti-patterns to avoid.
Thanks.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.